Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Incubator Podcast. We are live at the CHNC, and we are joined by Dr. Briana Bertoni from the Levine Children's Hospital in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yep.
The Carolinas are tough. We played this game at home recently where we tried to write down all 50 states, and
to play at home.
My daughter crushed me. I was like, I can get them. I'm like, 50 states should be fine. Yeah.
There are songs for them.
She knew the song. Yeah. Briana, thank you for joining us on the podcast, and you're here to talk to us about the CIQI Fellowship, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
So, what is the CIQI Fellowship?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there is a CIQI Fellowship that started about 2.5 years ago. So the CIQI Fellowship was designed really to take people who are interested in quality improvement and get them more actively engaged in CHNC CIQI. And so it takes people with baseline knowledge of quality improvement, that have institutional knowledge, who have participated in their institutional base for quality, and gets them involved in CHNC, gets them more knowledgeable about how the kind of life cycle of a CIQI project works.
What is a CIQI for the people who are not familiar?
Yeah, so CIQI is the acronym for essentially CHNC's version of quality.
Meaning a collaborative initiative that involves QI, basically, basically the QI has to be done in a collaborative manner with the CHNC team.
Exactly. And so they have a whole life cycle of what that looks like, which starts with essentially coming up with and calling for ideas for projects. And so before it ever gets to the point, so right now the project that we're working on is called Project Home, which is a project that has 35 centers across the nation that are working on trying to improve the rates of maternal parental milk at discharge. And so before it ever gets to the point that it's rolled out to the centers and we start working on that, there is about 12 months worth of work that go into the project before we even get to the point of rolling that out. So at that point, kind of coming up with ideas, deciding what's best practice, doing a literature search, putting together, what we call the CPR, clinical practice recommendations, getting the groups together to decide on metrics, which is a lot of detail. How are we actually going to measure all of this?
Seem like terrifying meetings.
Yeah. They're pretty in depth sometimes.
I'm sure people come in prepared, saying
there's a lot of opinions.
I'm sure. But what it really underscores is this really rigorous methodology of QI. And so it just makes sense that if we've got this scientific process, that we're going to need to train people in how to do it,
Absolutely. And how it's different from, okay, we do those same things at our individual center, right? When we do quality improvement, we come up with metrics, we look at best practice. And it's a little bit different when you're saying, okay, we're going to implement these metrics across 35 different centers who have different resources, right? Whose units, although we're all level 4 NICUs, the units are all going to look a little bit different.
Yes.
And so how do we say we want all of these units to have these same metrics? We want all these units to do these best practices while they all look different.
It's the practice of learning to make tough decisions, basically, right? Yeah. Because it's obvious that with 35 centers, you cannot do this exactly one single way. You have to find the path that encompasses everybody.
That's it.
And so I think that is a skill that seems critical to learn. And it's kind of cool also that you are giving that the fellows have time. So you said 12 months of preparation, which can feel terrifying, but it's kind of great when it's like, I'm not going to be rushed into this. And we can actually take our time to think this through and really feel that by the time we reach the point of rolling this out to the centers, it's been thought out and it's been something that we carefully crafted all together.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we do kind of like the call for the next fellow, we sort of do that actually in the middle of designing this and getting this ready to roll out. And so the fellow would come in as the project itself is chosen. So we put this call out and say, okay, what project would be interested as a QI project? What would your sites like? What would you be interested in? And then we vote based on a number of criteria. And then the fellow will take a bunch of applicants, and the fellow gets chosen. And then they come in at the time that we have a project chosen, and then they join the planning committee. And so they're going to join in on that. They'll miss a little bit at the beginning, but then as they go through their entire fellowship, at the end of fellowship, they'll be able to see the planning for the next meeting. Because if you were to come in sort of at the very, very beginning and learn everything, it might be a little bit overwhelming. And that was one thing that has been really great with me as being the first fellow, that the leadership team has said to me, well, do you think it would be better if people started at the beginning? And I was like, I mean, for me, I don't think so. I think actually where I started was perfect. And that was kind of where I came in, and you get to see the whole process layout, and then you get to come back and sort of join at the end and see the new project coming in.
And you can see the level of attention and detail that's being paid to the project with these initial steps. Sort of see where the benchmark is being placed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what do you think then is the value to have this kind of a longitudinal education versus some other QI opportunity for initial education?
So I think there's a lot of different parts and pieces to it. So before I did this, I had a lot of different quality improvement training.
Yeah.
Everything that I had done was institutional or smaller projects.
Yeah.
This, you get to see, well, how does funding work
Yeah.
at a national project? What are some of the unique challenges? How much time do we spend on definitions? Right? So, I mean, we're 12 months into the project, and there were, definitional questions that came up.
Yeah.
Right. And so I had participated in the meetings 12 months prior that we had those same discussions. And then we're 12 months later when I was like, wait a minute, I thought that we already talked about this. We thought it was all settled.
Yeah.
And then you have someone else's eyes that come and like look at it, and you realize just how different things can be interpreted. Right. So some of those like unique challenges that I think that you wouldn't necessarily get from smaller projects with less eyes on it, with less people, you get to see. I think another huge piece of this is just the mentorship.
Yeah.
So you guys, I think with the CIQI leadership here,
Sure. They're
they're
great.
incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're just amazing people, wonderful people. The mentorship that you get from this is just, I say unmatched. I might be a little biased, but
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And so in terms of the next, you were going to...
That's what I was going to say. So how do people who are interested learn more about this opportunity?
yeah, great question. So, so we'll be putting out kind of a call to people who are interested anytime soon. If you go on the CHNC website, you can go to the actual kind of fellowship page. There's a page about the fellowship. You can reach out, say, contact us. You can send an email through that and say, I'm interested in the fellowship. We'll get back to you and say, we've received, your interest. If you don't hear back anything yet right away, that's okay. That's because we're probably not at the stage yet that we're doing anything further with those applications. But let us know that you're interested in it. We're looking for a CV and then an interest statement. And then we'll kind of go from there. A lot of it, because it's so intertwined with the next project, the exact timing depends a little bit on what the next project is. But if you reach out through that, then again, we'll say that we know. If you have questions about it, feel free to reach out to me. So I'm on LinkedIn, not as good at X.
That's okay. That's
I
okay.
think that's fine. LinkedIn is fine.
But you can reach out to me. My email is also up there. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have questions about it.
And then I know you have this long background of QI training. Are there any pre-qualifications for?
Yeah, so they're looking, the steering committee is who decides, the CIQI steering committee makes the decision, but they're looking for someone who has some background knowledge of quality improvement. Really just because if you don't have any background knowledge coming into it, it would be really, really overwhelming and difficult to do. So background knowledge and background experience in quality improvement at the local level. And that's really it. And it has to be someone, because of the data component of it, that is at a CHNC site.
Okay. Love it. Okay.
Very cool. Thank you, Briana.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's our pleasure.
Of course.
Keep up the great work.
Thank you.